Bumpy, tricky, and well, one of the most iconic circuits on the IndyCar calendar. Welcome to round 6 of the TWSRL IndyCar series, taking place today from Detroit, Belle Isle, not the Nurburgring circuit. My name is Sebastian Bosher-Williams. Alongside me in the commentary booth, I have Randall, McGrew, and on production we have Dustin, Ollis. Randall, a little bit of a calendar change for tonight's event, of course. We're all sort of expecting to turn up and head towards the German shores and to one of the most iconic sort of modern circuits. But in fact, we're at Belle Isle. How much of a different sort of threat is that going to pose to our drivers? It's a much different circuit and arguably one of the most trickiest tracks to drive in iRacing. Surely our drivers are going to be in for quite a challenge tonight.
This will definitely be the most challenging circuit on the schedule for these drivers. The walls of Belle Isle will be looming the entire 38 laps. I think they're going to have to drive this almost like an endurance race. You want to be going 90 to 95% to make sure that you can see that checkered flag instead of going 100% the whole time.
We've seen drivers really struggle in practice so far today, so I share your sentiments there, Randall. It's all going to be about survival and likewise qualifying as well. That's going to be so tricky. Is it all about getting a bank lap in as early as you can and starting to build yourself up, like, you know, Monaco, if you take a Formula 1 analogy, and sort of saving your best lap time until the dying moments of qualifying?
You definitely want to make sure that you get a banker lap in early. Just the slightest touch of the wall will invalidate your lap time, so you need to make sure that you have a good lap in there early before you really start pushing the car around the tricky, bumpy track here at Belle Isle. There's a few places where you can get really caught out, particularly coming out of turn 2 if you're really on the button and trying to go fast. Those bumps will catch you out, and next thing you know, you're eating concrete.
I think we'll see a few drivers doing that today. Qualifying underway, 3 minutes gone out of your 10-minute session. And Brian Hotham was the fastest man on the track, but that's been taken by Aubrey Cundell. 1 minute 15.809 is the time to beat. Aubrey on the primary tyre, so tyre strategy is already differing from your top three. As Alexander sets a lap time, goes into 6th place, but drivers are really starting to pick up the pace. Ricardo Serrano, a man on a mission at the moment, crosses the line. 1 minute 15.2 goes to the top of the timing stands. Nice run through turns 1 and 2 down towards Randall. What's arguably one of the best overtaking opportunities on the track. Turn 3, it's a long, hard braking zone. Do you expect to see a lot of action heading in there today?
We will almost certainly see lots of action there at turn 3. It is the best passing opportunity. You have another one at the end of the straightaway that Justin's about to go on to now, but with the curving entry of it, it's not nearly as good of a braking opportunity as there at turn 3. So we will see a lot of action there. But there's also another good overtaking spot right near the end of the lap where maybe we can end up seeing a drag race to the finish line.
Of course, we'll have to wait and see. It's going to be an enthralling race, I am sure, today. Bobby Flack, the new provisional pole sitter, up at 14.3, completely blows the lap times by Serrano out and Hotham out of the water. Bobby Flack, though, on the alternate tyre, so on the quicker compound. Gritsko goes just a little bit quicker, 1 minute 14.304, the new time to beat. Serrano up in sectors 1, 4 and 5. Does that allow him to move up closer to the top of the timing stands? It does, but Justin Barrera goes just a little bit quicker. And you have to say, those alternate tyres at the moment, Randall, look quick. They look like the tyre to be on, certainly on 1 lap pace, which I guess isn't too much of a surprise, but it's just whether Serrano can get that advantage over a long run. And that might sort of play dividends as we head into the race itself.
Serrano showing some really good pace on those primary tires. Actually, a big lick of the wall there. Actually, the red tires seem to be worth about 0.7 to a second, depending on the driver. And they fade after 9 or 10 laps, so starting the race on them could be a tricky proposition. They're going to have to stop at least twice for fuel. They have to use each compound. If you're a driver that's really good on the tires, you may choose to do 2 stints on those reds. If you're not so good on the tires, you'll probably do 2 stints on the blacks. Starting the race on the reds should give you a bit of an advantage, but if Serrano is able to start near the front on those primaries, he's going to have a big advantage later in the race.
Or down to strategy. We saw Ellsworth set his first lap time, goes into 8th place overall. Another driver on the Redwood alternate compounds riding on board with your provisional pole sitter Gritsko as he heads through turns 13, through the kink of 14, up towards the start finish line. We wait a few seconds to see, has he managed to improve on his lap time? Not on this occasion. Gritsko could not go quicker than his own fastest lap time. Justin Barrera, though, within touching distance of Flack in second and Gritsko in first. Barrera just heading through the exit of turn 6 up this sort of curved back straight towards, as Randall mentioned, the tricky turn 7 braking zone. Late braking, try not to hit the apex curve, run the car out wide, not too wide to hit the walls. Very much the story of the Belle Isle circuit through turns 9, 10 into the left-hander, the right-hander, I do apologise, of turn 11. The short shoot down to turn 12. This lap time not necessarily delivering for Barrera. A little bit of a nibble of the wall as well for good measure. That might just invalidate his current lap time. There's the Augustine Castro up through the first 3 sectors. Couldn't improve in sector 4, but Augustine really finding some pace. Another driver in contention for pole here today as he rounds turn 14. Where does he manage to put that 49 car? Well, he goes to the top of the timing stands. 1 minute 14.172. A crucial lap there by Augustine Castro. And in fact, Castro still has 1 more lap at his disposal. So Randall, he could be looking at going even quicker in this session.
We saw lap times down as far as 13.8 in practice. Now that may have involved some slipstream or the push to pass button, but Castro absolutely flying out here, 1/10 and some change faster than Gritsko. It'll be very interesting to see if he can maintain that kind of pace in the race.
Going to be such a good battle here today, and if the battles weren't good enough, the element of survival, the tyre strategy, the fuel saving as well, it's all sort of a perfect amalgamation of components that make an absolutely astounding race. So this is Agustin Castro not improving on this lap. You can tell at the bottom by all the yellow sectors, meaning he's not going faster than himself. So he'll pull into the pits, I'm sure. So he decides to cross the line, maybe sort of resorting Randall to maybe a little bit more of race run practice, just maybe seeing how the tyres are developing throughout a stint. He's still got about a minute left in qualifying. His laps won't count, but you know, extra practice is extra practice.
Yeah, it certainly can't hurt. And if he finds himself on those red sidewalls there at the end of the race with a low fuel load, this could be the ideal practice time for him to feel what that car is going to act like. And when you talk about survival, it's much, much easier to survive when you're up at the front of the grid at the start of the race. If there's any mayhem in the field, you don't have to dodge any of it.
Certainly so, and that leads really nicely into my next question. Talking about turn one, it's a really difficult corner. Actually, the opening sector is quite quite a section that's fraught with danger on the opening lap. Do you think we're going to see drivers sort of play it quite careful today and really have that survival mentality at their hearts?
Overall, yes, I think they'll play it pretty safely on turn one, but at the start, you may see some heroics. Turn one, when you're at a slower speed on that pacing lap up to the start line, can provide you a good opportunity to be aggressive and opportunistic and get a couple spots very early on.
Here then is your grid for round 6, and Agustin Castro takes the pole position. 10th of a second behind is Christian Gritzko, and that completes your first row. Bobby Flack lines up in 3rd place. Alongside him is Justin Barrera in 4th. Ricardo Serrano starts in 5th, the first man on the primary tyres. He's certainly one to watch in today's race. Chad Rogers starts in 6th. Brian Hotham in 7th. Aubrey Condell lines up in 8th place. Gavin Ellsworth starts 9th. And Cunion rounds out your top 10. Mike Weir starts 11th with Neil Alexander alongside him in 12th place. Barry Cochran in 13th. Clay Harris in 14th. And Kevin Dixon rounds out your 15-car grid. Kevin Dixon did not set a lap time in qualifying, but I do believe he is out and on the circuit, so we'll be taking part. So we will have all 15 cars, and almost feels like a little bit of a blessing, Randall, not having, you know, sort of 20, 30 cars on the grid. 15 seems a much more reasonable number for Belle Isle, because you can so often see the track being blocked due to an incident, and we don't necessarily want to be seeing that tonight.
It's definitely going to be better for the drivers, maybe a little less exciting for the broadcast. There's nothing like seeing a full grid of cars take to the streets of Belle Isle, but hopefully they can get themselves sorted out pretty early with this few out here and get some clean racing and get those laps done with as many cars finishing as possible.
You see on your screen the current weather conditions, 70 degrees Fahrenheit track temperature. Nice and cool for the drivers. It's important to note the time, 9:32 in the morning. That means it's only going to get hotter. And that might just favour the drivers starting on the alternate tyres. They can get rid of it before the track temperature really rises and can just run the primaries, while, you know, drivers like Serrano in 5th has to run the alternate tyres at some point because he will not start the race on that compound. The pace car pulls in and we get ready to go racing for the 6th time this season, and that's an early start from Agustin Castro. Took everybody by surprise. Gritzko really on the back foot as they make their way around the kink of turn 14. Down the inside goes just Bobby Flack, I do apologise, trying to make his way around the outside. Serrano on the outside as well of Aubrey Condell. Those two drivers on the primary tyres really battling it out down towards the braking zone of turn 3. Late lunge there by Serrano, gets the move done on Rogers. Crucial moves by Serrano. Randall, you said there'd be some heroics on the opening lap. Certainly was. Oh, spinner in the background there. Huge incident. That's Rogers going around. Everybody tries to avoid him. Rogers thankfully returns to the pits as quickly as possible. But drivers certainly involved, certainly damaged from that spin from Chad Rogers. Chad Rogers back into the pits. So it's Agustin Castro leading from Christian Gritzko. Justin Barrera up one place in third. Bobby Flack down to fourth. And Brian Hotham currently in seventh place. As we look at Barry Cochran, he's gained a position on the opening lap as well. But what an opening lap. You have to say there, Randall from Serrano. Really decisive moves.
Really, really good moves from Serrano, but he is on those primary tires as well as is Aubrey Cundell, and they're gonna feel like two cats in a dog run here for the first couple laps until those tires come up to temperature and get in a nice working range, showing very good talent and skill. They're on cold tires to get some moves done early. So the best time to make overtakes is at the start of the race. Now they've sort of sorted themselves out, and hopefully they can get those tires up to temperature and start hanging with these red tires.
Like we're in the slipstream of Ellsworth. Thought he was going to make a move to the inside. Ellsworth a little bit tardy on the apex. Look at Neil Alexander in the background trying to get involved in on the action as well as they head up towards the braking zone of turn 5, really heading into the section where you can't make a move unless you're very, very committed. But Ellsworth a little bit, I think, distracted by Mike Weir in his mirrors. Mike Weir, another one of the drivers on the primary tyres, and that's really going to decide this race today. It's all about the tyre strategy. It's all about, can you master those sort of quicker wearing alternate tyres. Agustin Castro still has that 1.1 second advantage over Christian Gritzko. Gritzko tantalizingly just outside that sort of magical 1 second window where you start to really feel the benefits of DRS. As Ellsworth is into the wall, and that's a mistake that's going to cost Ellsworth at least a position. And surely, Randall, that's not what you want to be doing on lap 3 of the race. He pulls to the inside. Is he going to let Mike Weir go through? Yes, he is. Ellsworth certainly looks like he's damaged, and really not what you want to do. As Christian Gritzko is falling further and further down the order. What has happened to your second place man, or at least the driver who was in second place a few moments ago, heading down into turn 3? Is he going to lose the rear? Yes, he is. Into the wall. Oh, and heartbreak for Christian Gritzko there, Randall.
It's so easy to do. You get hard onto the brakes. The rears can lock up just a little bit, like just happened there. And it takes a lot of wherewithal to let go of that brake and pull into those runoff areas. That could have saved his race. Maybe only lost a couple of positions and some time. Instead, he finds himself in the tire barrier with heavy wheel damage and has to take the tow back to the pits. And that's really going to set him back.
Tolling broken for Christian Gritzko. Oh, late under brakes by Neil Alexander heading into turn 8. Thought he was going to rear end the back of Mike Weir. That's allowed Barry Cochran right behind him to close up. So that gap really starting to reduce. It's all going really in Agustin Castro's favour at the moment. It's got a 3-second advantage back to Justin Barrera behind. That's a poor exit by Alexander. Cochran had to lift off the throttle. Such was his speed differential. Ellsworth does head into the pits after colliding with the wall. So that's put him off strategy. So Ellsworth really another driver on an uphill battle. Cochran onto his push to pass. You can tell by the green flashing lights on his steering wheel. Can he make the move? That's a late run by Cochran. Now Alexander almost stopping on the outside of turn 3 to let Cochran go through. It seemed that Alexander didn't want any part of that move, Randall, and just sort of is really playing that survival mentality at the moment.
Survival is the name of the game at Belle Isle, and we saw Gavin Ellsworth pull into the pits, as you mentioned, very early. Is going to put him off strategy. Now, with a little bit of fuel saving, he can actually stretch it out on 2 black runs and still make it on fuel, so he may not have lost as much time as we thought. As we see Neil Alexander run a little bit wide and into that runoff area, better that than into the tires.
Looking on your screen at the moment, and Barry Cochran, he's used 6 push to passes so far in this race, Randall. We've only been going for 5 laps. In fact, 4 for Barry. Hasn't managed to cross the line for a 5th time. I mean, you know, it's clearly working for him. You know, Barry's currently at 4th spots from where he started. But that is a lot. That is a lot of push-to-pass usage so early on into this race.
When I did some practice laps, I found that the push to pass didn't really give much benefit in free air. So maybe he was making the best of it while he had some traffic and some slipstream to use to help compound those gains. But in the free air, I found it was really only worth maybe 1.5 tenths down some of these straightaways. The setup is running a lot of downforce, so the push to pass is not really going to give you much when you're out by yourself. Now, if you have somebody cutting a hole in the air for you, that's really going to help you close that gap, and then you can maintain that momentum when you go to make a move.
Although Serrano starting to feel the benefits of those primary compound tyres, slowly gaining onto the back of Bobby Flack. That will be for 3rd place and the lowest spot on the podium. And Serrano just starting to look more comfortable. We're only on lap 6, but it already seems, Randall, like the primaries have switched over to be the better race tyre. You see a 15.8 there, so Flack actually a 10th quicker on that lap, just as we start talking about the tyre strategy. But Serrano, you know, certainly isn't really paying a price for starting on those primaries, which can only mean that that strategy is going to get better for him as he runs just a little bit deep into turn 3. Thought he might end up into the barriers like we saw Christian Gritzko succumb to. Not on this occasion. But yeah, as I was saying, Randall, the primary tyres look pretty good so far today.
Primary tires are definitely the tire of choice unless you can really take care of your reds. As you said, we're now on the 6th lap of the race, 5.5 complete for this pair. The primaries are definitely in their working zone now, and the red sidewalls are beginning to fall off a little bit. As you see Bobby Flack getting a little tail happy out of there. This is where you're going to start seeing those red sidewall cars start to lose the rear end just a little bit. As we see Barry Cochran pulling out of pit lane and just gets a little happy with the throttle, and it's very bumpy there on pit exit. And man, it spins the car and causes another car, Gavin Ellsworth, to check up. That's really unfortunate.
Really unfortunate. And cued in another driver falling foul of the track limits, has to quickly find reverse gear. Reverse gear is back live to live pictures. Bobby Flack being overtaken by Serrano. Flack taken by surprise, really avoiding the apex of turn 3, almost to the point where he was into the tyre barrier. Serrano, though, wide through turn 5. He was almost into the tyre barrier, so drivers really starting to struggle out on the circuit. Brian Hotham gaining on the back of Aubrey Cundell. Cundell, another one of the drivers on the primary compound. Brian Hotham on the red walled alternates to the braking zone of turn 7. A little bit of a contact with the wall for Hotham, really pushing the limits of the circuit. You see through the apex of turn 8, Hotham being able to utilize that grip. Can't send it to the inside of turn 11 and just has to wait behind Aubrey Cundell. It's all now about whether Cundell could gain up to the back of Bobby Flack to really utilize those primary tyres, or if it is just Ricardo Serrano that's managed to master those black-walled alternate tyres. Barrera setting a fairly decent lap on that last lap there. Randall gained about 0.4 of a second or so. Augustine Castro hasn't looked like he's had any challenge to his race lead since the start, but maybe, just maybe, Barrera starting to gain just a little bit.
Barrera was the fastest in practice. Castro could be saving his tires. If you can stretch out these red tires to run just a little bit longer, you could possibly go on 2 stints of them and get your full 17 laps worth of fuel on a black stint in the middle and have a pretty light fuel load and a quick run to the finish on the red sidewalls to fight off any challengers. So he could just be saving his tires. We see Brian Hotham was having very smooth inputs, getting onto the throttle very gently. And he's really taking a very smooth line through these corners. It looks like he's also saving his tires, not trying to press to get around Aubrey. And now that they're nearly 8 laps complete, those red sidewalls are not going to be very fast. So he may just be in tire stretch mode. We may see him coming to the pits this lap even.
Tyres are going to be a huge factor here today. Does anybody dare to come into the pits on lap number 9? not on this occasion. They all make their way past the pit entry. Hotham really catching Kandal through turns 1 and 2, proving that those Red Bull tyres have a little bit of grip still to give. Does Hotham think about sending it to the inside? Wisely decides against it, but Hotham, oh, so deep under braking. Certainly not the optimal line, and certainly not the best line for your heart rate. Neil Alexander, the 27 car, what has happened to him? Sorry, girls. Gavin Ellsworth, is he just making his way past Ellsworth and up into what would be 10th spot? But I think Neil Alexander then on the same lap goes on to have a little bit of an issue. Through turn 11 we go. Loses the rear, gets sideways, does the old apply the brake and the throttle to keep the car from really wandering too far out or out into the walls. The heartbreak for Alexander, and already I know that they've made a pit stop, Randall, but they're already a lap down from the race leader. I mean, that's fairly impressive considering we're only on lap 10.
It's a pretty quick lap around here. They're looking at, yeah, it's a long lap, much faster than you would see in like GT cars. So it's very easy to fall a lap down here if you have issues, especially if you have to nurse a car around the track. But if you take extensive pit services, you can definitely go a lap down pretty easily.
The drivers who have been into the pits already: Ellsworth, Alexander, Harris, Cochrane as well. Gritzko and Rogers have also been into the pits, but they are not out on the circuit and classified as out of this race. There are only 13 drivers remaining in this race at the moment. You see Aubrey Kandal still under pressure from Hotham behind, and Bobby Flack starting to just gain a little bit up the road. Kandal out of that crucial second window. In fact, most drivers are at the moment. Everybody just running their own race, really managing the fuel, managing the tyres, and this is, you know, this is where, you know, almost the not the amateurs, but the, you know, the drivers that race the IndyCar, you know, occasionally, and the drivers that exclusively race the IndyCar, this is where the difference can really be shown. There's a car almost into the wall there. Was that a car unlapping themselves? I wonder. That might have been Clay Harris trying to make his way through. Sorry, Barry Cochrane almost into the wall. That was some fairly extreme getting sort of a lapping technique from Cochrane. They all managed to make their way past him without any issues. But, you know, as I was alluding to, Randall, you know, the drivers that know this IndyCar inside out, know how to fuel save, know how to tyre manage and do that all at once while driving around Belle, will just have so much of an easier time over the drivers that maybe aren't so familiar with this IndyCar machinery.
That's absolutely right. This IndyCar is such a fun thing to drive, but it will lull you into a false sense of security like we saw at Spa. You can just, you think you're feeling comfortable, you think you got a handle on it, and the next thing you know, the rear end is lighting up and you're spinning the car. And unlike Spa, there's not a lot of runoff room here. You're going to quickly find yourself in one of those concrete barriers.
Yeah, oh, so close to the racing line. And even when the drivers come into the pits, they're going to be, you know, coming out on cold tyres. You know, everything's cooled down. It's going to be a real challenge for our drivers to keep it on the circuit, as we've already seen in today's race by Barry Cochrane just struggling on the pit exit. Excuse me, and getting the damage on the apex of turn 2. So that's another factor to watch. So many different strategies and factors to watch in this race. Bobby Flack still in 4th place, one of the first drivers really on the alternate tyres after the top 2, and starting to become under pressure from the drivers further back who started on the primary tyres. So that's a key battle to be watching in this race, to work out what tyre compound is the best. That gap between Castro and Barrera has been slowly dropping over the last few laps. Last lap, Justin Barrera gained 7/10 of a second. Castro into the 1:16, so 1:16.278 to be precise. So Barrera really starting to reel in the race leader. And is Castro fuel saving? Is he feeling a little bit more under pressure? Well, that lap traffic really not helping Justin Barrera and Clay Harris getting out of the way, but probably not within the time frame that Barrera was hoping for. and that's allowed Augustine Castro to ride up the road just a little bit more. But Castro just doesn't seem to be as comfortable in the car. Every time we sort of ride on board with him or look at a camera shot of Castro's car, he's getting really close to the walls, sparks are flying, and Barrera just seems to just have it more under control. He sort of just feels more comfortable at the moment.
Castro's been a little bit snake bit this season, so it's good to see him back up front, and hopefully he can make his way onto the podium. He's had a few issues. Now he's got a good start to this race. Like you said, we watched him in practice. He was definitely pushing the limits of the track. We saw there some sparks flying, and that unfortunately is a failure of the sim. I don't think that was really a wall touch, maybe just a bit of that infamous net code that we always talk about. But he's looking pretty good. He might be pushing the tires a little bit much. Justin Barrera definitely seems to be the faster driver right now, as we've seen that gap evaporate by 3 or 4 tenths per lap. I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen any of these red sidewall drivers into the pits yet, especially these leaders. They're definitely at the point where the reds are going to be losing a lot of traction, are going off the edge, so they'll be looking to change onto those black sidewalls very soon.
And of course, at their disposal, they have the tools in the car to help manage the tyre wear. How would the drivers be doing that? Is it all about the roll bar changes? Would they be changing the brake bias? How would the drivers be managing the tyre wear as the run develops?
So you could manage your brake bias just a little bit. Brake bias is a bit of more of a driving style thing, and it's different and unique to each driver. Everybody prefers a different bias setting. As the tires wear, if you're having understeer, you can soften that front rear or that front roll bar. If you're getting a lot of snap oversteer, which is very prone to happen in the red sidewalls as they get older, whenever you're driving off the corner, you could soften that rear roll bar to prevent that oversteer from happening. But ultimately what you have to do is manage that right foot.
Or very technical, you need such a technical mindset to drive these cars, and certainly around this circuit, one of the most challenging on the iRacing calendar for any car, let alone a car of this caliber, the Indy, the IR18, I should say. Aubrey Kendall stalled out a little bit in fifth, has not managed to get to the heights of Serrano. They started practically side by side at the start of the race, so Ricardo Serrano, the highest runner of the primary tyres, although not really gaining too much on Barrera and Castro. Last lap time was fairly similar for the top three. And you have to say that the more that this run develops, the closer that we get to sort of that lap 17, that lap 18 sort of pit stop window, the more the alternate tyres are looking like a good choice. So I wonder if that might influence the driver's decision for their second and third stints. Although, in IndyCar, in real-world motorsport, we have engineers watching the race, watching how the tyres develop. They have so much data at their disposal. But, in iRacing, it's all down to you as the driver. So if you're not aware of what's going on around you, you can't really make informed choices. So it's all about what you've planned before the race, as we see Aubrey Kendall making his way past Clay Harris. Harris a lap down now to 6th place. And above Aubrey Kendall, a lot of understeer though through that turn 8 complex, really struggling to get the car slowed down for the right-hander of turn 11. Those primaries don't look that nice on Kendall's car at the moment, Randall.
The old primaries and the old reds are about the same pace. The difference being that the old reds are a lot less forgiving. As we see, actually, Ricardo Serrano is the first of the leaders to pull into the pits. He's on those primaries. It'd be interesting to see if we see him on the alternates coming out of this pit stop for the second stint.
Serrano, as you mentioned, into the pits. Those primary tyres really not working for him. And what tyres does he exit the race on? I do believe he's once again on some primary tyres. So Serrano doing the primary strategy. So he wants to be on the alternates for the end. That could give us a fairly exciting finish to this race. He's come out just over a second behind Q-Did, who's had his own issues in today's race, and you can already see the difference between old tyres and new. Serrano just gaining hand over fist through the first few corners of this lap that he's pushing in earnest. Of course, you can't push these tyres, can you, at the start of your stint? You have to bed them in nicely, you have to treat them well, and you also have to be wary, Randall, that these tyres are cold. No tyre blankets, no ability really to heat them up other than than with driving around the circuit. So Serrano, it's a huge workload that he's having to deal with at the moment from the cockpit.
And he's dealing with a little bit of dirty air. They're not really going fast enough through a lot of these corners for dirty air to make a huge difference, but it can catch you out if you're not aware of it. So he's doing a very good job of taking it easy and not pushing too hard to get those tires up to temperature. If he takes this stint to the same length that he took his first stint, he'll have about 8 laps on those red sidewalls at the end of the race. So only having to do 8 laps on the red sidewalls, he can really, really push those tires.
What has happened to Gavin Ellsworth, the 14 car, heading into turn 3? Simply realised that he wasn't going to make the corner and then decides to do a little bit of a 3-point turn on the escape road. Decides not to spin turn the car and ruin the tyres, as we often see in motorsport, and then you feel the effects, sort of certainly taking the more economical way out in terms of saving those tyres. This battle on the track, that's closed in. Everybody sort of within 0.4 of a second of each other. Still Bobby Flack leading this pack as we see your long-time race leader, Augustine Castro, head to pit road. So that's his first stint completed. He managed to make it 18 laps. Barrera can go for one more. And this battle for fourth place, or what will be fourth place when pit stops have played themselves out. Nobody from this pack decides to head into the pit. So Castro is the first man really of the alternate drivers to come into the pits. And do you think Castro is playing it a little bit safe there, Randall, or do you think just because he hasn't had slipstream from anybody, he hasn't been able to feel safe, that he simply just hasn't got the fuel mileage of Barrera and Flack and Cundell and the like behind him?
That's certainly an option that
Augustine
Castro.
Sorry to cut across you there, Randall. Augustine Castro does not have a front wing, and has he done what Cochrane did? This is on the pit exit. Is he going to lose the rears and spin out? I think that's exactly what we're going to see in our heartbreak for Augustine Castro there, Randall.
And that's 2 times this season he's struggled coming out of the pits on cold tires. He's been really snake bit this season. Had probably the worst luck of any driver in this series, and now he's gotten it again. He's going to have to limp that car back around to the pits without a front wing. That's going to be very difficult in some of these corners. That front wing really helps slow the car down with all the drag on the front end. It's going to feel very understeery without it, but he's made his way around one of the tougher corners just fine, as we see the rest of the field that has not pit starting to come into the pit lane now. They definitely did some fuel saving to make 18 laps on those tires. I'm honestly surprised some of those red sidewall tires drivers managed to stretch it out as long as they did. I surely expected that some of them were going to run on a lighter fuel load to start and pit rather early.
Certainly, I was thinking the same. So Serrano heads around and into second place. So he's got the jump on. Sorry, he was already ahead, wasn't he, of Flack and Hotham and the like, although he's on slightly more worn tyres. So that sort of plays into the advantage of Flack and Hotham and Cundell when we head to the end of this stint, as we see the damaged car of Castro head back into the pits, and he'll put on another set of tyres, get a new front wing, and head back out into this race. Pereira still out on his original set of tyres and should in theory come out in the net race lead. This Flack Hotham Cundell battle still very close, although Aubrey Cundell fallen away from this battle. It was a 3-horse race, certainly now down to 2, at least at the moment. Mike Weir also being overtaken by Q-Nin. Action up and down the field. We head through turn 8. And Barrera is looking good for, at least for leading the race, as we see Mike Weir just get out of the way of Augustine Castro. Is that a damaged car by Mike Weir? He's certainly not going that quick. Was he just sort of letting Castro through, or has Mike Weir got a little bit more of a gremlin? I wonder. Oh, certainly has. Randall, that steering, it does not look straight whatsoever, and Weir looks really like he's struggling to get that car around the circuit as Barrera goes for another lap. Justin Barrera currently on lap 20 of his opening stint. Oh, we're into the wall, and that almost seemed inevitable, Randall.
Yeah, he was definitely struggling with that car. We didn't see what happened originally, but yeah, he had hit the wall there at turn 3, and It looked like much heavier damage at first, but then eventually corrected itself. Then he tags the wall coming out of turn 4. That's where we've seen Augustin Castro get around him. And now he just tried to do his best to bring it home and inevitably failed. You see there, our leader finally on pit lane.
So Barrera has managed to extend that stint as long as possible, 21 laps, over half the race on a set of alternate tyres. Does mean that he can get to the end on this stint if he can manage the fuel and manage the tyres like he managed to do in the opening stint. Where does Ricardo Serrano fall into this race picture? Serrano crosses the start-finish line, 1 minute 15.9, but Barrera 7 or so seconds ahead of Serrano, and that just gives him such an advantage when it comes, Randall, to being able to get into the rhythm. He's not under pressure from the cars behind. It's not, like Augustin Castro that had to push when he exited the pits. Barrera can bring the tyres up to temperature in the way that he wants. He can manage the traffic in the way that he wants. It's really an ideal situation for the 419 car at the moment.
And honestly, at the way that he strung out that first stint to be 20 laps long is super impressive. That means he had to save 2.5 laps of fuel. This is definitely one of those tracks where lift and coast can get you a lot of fuel savings. We saw there was a little bit of issue there going around the fountain. You can definitely save a lot of fuel here with lift and coast, particularly with this high downforce package. You just let go of the throttle early, let the arrows slow you down, and then by the time you get to the corner, you just have to brake a little bit, and then you can roll slowly back into the throttle. He managed to get 2.5 extra laps out of that tank. Now that means he only has to get an extra half of a lap, so should be easy going for him. So not only does he have a 5-second lead, he likely has a whole pit stop in hand.
Really, a really important place for Barrera to be in terms of this race lead. And you're right, he is effectively a pit stop and 5 seconds ahead of the field. Augustin Castro trying to find his way past Kunin as they head up towards turn number 12. What has happened to Mike with the 20 car not having the best of races, and runs on the exit of turn 2. A little bit of dirty air there playing a factor, and where finds himself firmly into the wall as Kunin there defending on the outside from Augustin Castro. Castro, does he think about going around the outside of turn 2? That becomes the inside for turn 3 on this long run down. Castro gaining has overtaken Kunin. Does Q though try and fight the move into turn 3? Well, he certainly didn't let Augustin Castro take it without a little bit of a fight, but Castro on those alternate tyres just able to brake a little bit later, to take a little bit more apex speed, and heads up into 6th place. And Augustin Castro, I'm a bit surprised, Randall. I thought after he had that spin, he'd come in, he'd stick on the primaries because he hasn't run the primary tyres yet. So Castro's still going to have to make another pit stop. He can't get to the end of the race without using both compounds. I'm surprised that he didn't just come out on the primaries and just try and run to the end, because that sort of really or locked him into one definitive strategy.
Yeah, that is a bit of a surprise. That just having the 1 lap on the Reds is all you need. Maybe he didn't think that he would be able to make it on fuel and would need to come in anyway, and thought that being on the Reds might give him his best shot to make up some of those positions. But yeah, like you're right, an interesting strategy. And if I was his crew chief, I would have been putting those black sidewalls on and giving him a fuel number to drive to make it to the end of the race.
Certainly seemed like the way that I would have played it as well, but Augustin Castro, he's a very experienced driver, and he's always got something up his sleeve, whether that's in the WSRL IndyCar series or the sister series of the WSRL multi-class on a Tuesday evening. He's always been a very exciting driver to watch. So I know I certainly become, or I have started to expect the unexpected from Augustin Castro, we'll put it that way. Brian Hotham in 4th place, still behind Bobby Flack. Aubrey Kundell gaining on this pack. So Kundell using those alternate tyres, Kunin the 86. Through turn 5 we go, up towards turn 6, a tricky corner on this circuit, deceptively tricky. Is he going to run wide? No, he's going to be into the wall, and another nose cone destroyed. And it almost starts to feel, if we can, sort of draw conclusions or draw imagery Randall, to real life IndyCar, was it the Nashville Grand Prix where you saw that photo of all the cars and nose cones that were sort of damaged? Sort of almost feels we're getting to that point. Is that the late move from Aubrey Cundell through turn 4? Great move, though, crucial move for Cundell, using those alternate tyres, makes his way past Hotham. Now, up next for Aubrey Cundell is Bobby Flack, but going back to that famous IndyCar picture, nose cones certainly becoming a little bit more of a premium item in the pit lane.
That's absolutely right. If you live near Detroit or Nashville and you have an entrepreneurial mindset, it may behoove you to open up a carbon fiber shop where you can craft parts for these nose cones and front wings for IndyCars, because they sure like to go through them at tracks like that. So another day at Belle Isle that is playing very good into the front wing market.
Really benefiting all of those carbon fiber engineers who make these extraordinarily complex parts in such an interesting field. I urge you to look into how they make these front wings on YouTube or something like that. It's utterly fascinating. Aubrey Cundell really starting to find pace on those alternate tyres. One of the quickest drivers out on the circuit at the moment, quicker than Serrano, Flack, and actually your race leader Barrera up ahead. So Cundell got the pace, although has got those faster compound tyres on. Randall, it looks like Justin Barrera's just not got the pace of Serrano at the moment. Serrano, that gap was 7 seconds when Barrera exited the pits. Or I know that Barrera has to go through that tyre warm-up phase. It takes a few laps to get accustomed to the new compound. But even so, Serrano is a little bit quicker every lap, and Barrera just not finding the pace that he found on the alternate tyres.
Well, it's one thing for Serrano to catch Barrera. It's another thing to pass him. Barrera also knows that he could probably stretch this out without another pit stop. Serrano may or may not have a teammate on the radio with him, letting him know the situation. Serrano absolutely needs to be flying here. If he's going to have to take another stop for fuel, he's got to close that gap and pass Barrera and try to build as much of a lead as he can before he stops again. But on lap 26 out of 38, he's already starting to quickly run out of time. As we see, Kunin has had another issue after replacing that nose cone. He does a quick throttle spin on the car, gets it pointing back in the right direction, pulls out of the way of oncoming traffic, and continues his race. It's like the approach to turn 3 here maybe just locks it up, braking just a little bit too late. No, he clips the inside curb, and that unbalances the car and sends him around. Very unfortunate for Kwok.
And of course, you have to run the cars. All these cars are so stiffly sprung, as you really see the effects. Kunin, though, Randall, lucky to get away without any more damage to his car. He's already been into the pits to replace a nose cone, and it's so easy to end your race there, like we saw Christian Gritzko do, 17 laps or so ago. Now, I think a little bit more than that, maybe. Trying to do quick math in the commentary box, never a good idea, let me tell you. Certainly not at 3 a.m. in the morning, Flack ever so sort of crossed up on the exit of turn 13. And Aubrey Cundell starting to apply pressure, and you can really tell actually that Flack is feeling that pressure at the moment. Those alternate tyres, you have to say, look a lot better. Oh, his Flack is into the wall. A huge snap of oversteer, and that's allowed Aubrey Cundell to make his way past. But the bigger question for Bobby Flack is that car okay? Has he picked up any long-lasting damage? Certainly, Randall, has he picked up any steering damage? We've seen how dangerous and how difficult it can be to maintain a car with steering damage. What is your expert opinion as we ride on board with Bobby Flack?
Bobby was really lucky there. He didn't knock the rear end toe out of line. These cars are pretty tough, so you can probably take a lick or two of the wall, but after a while, those parts will start to give up. You saw him coming down the run to turn 3, weaving back and forth, getting a feel for the steering. Very smart move to know what you're going to have on your hands coming into that very tight turn 3. But it seems like he got away with one. He only lost a position in a little bit of time. If he keeps it out of the wall for the rest of the race, he should be okay.
So this battle for first place has really started to heat up in the last few laps or so. That lap was a slow lap from Barrera, 17.6 compared to Serrano's 15.9. So almost 2 seconds difference between those two. As Barrera losing a lot of time on the straight. Is down the inside goes Serrano. Serrano taken by surprise. Huge save, supreme car control by Ricardo Serrano. And Barrera was just so slow. It's almost like he hasn't got full engine mapping or something. And Serrano, I think he might have even touched the wall. But that was a save and a half. I mean, you know, a round of applause and a bow of the cap to Serrano, because that could have been race ending for sure. But Randall, why is Barrera going so slow? Is he running in a lower fuel map? Because that certainly took us and Serrano by surprise.
He may be running in a lower fuel map, but that almost looked like a lift and coast, and that's a very dodgy proposition when you're fighting for a position like that and you have a car right behind you. It really took a really heads-up move by Serrano to get to the inside there as quickly as he did, and then exhibits hands of a gunfighter by making that save. That's the save of the season. We saw Bobby Flack make a big save last week at Spa, and that pales in comparison to what Serrano just pulled off.
Down the inside goes Ricardo Serrano into turn one. Almost contact between the leading pair. Barrera on the inside, forcing Serrano to go all the way around the outside. They bang wheels, and that has had the effect of not allowing Serrano to continue to use his push-to-pass usage, although I don't think Serrano's going to need it as he goes down the inside into turn three. Can Barrera fight back? Does Barrera need to fight back, or can he allow Serrano just to get up the field? Maybe does Barrera want a little bit of slipstream? It seems like he's struggling for fuel saving, or really focusing at least on that fuel saving strategy. Does a little bit of tow, a little bit of slipstream work in Barrera's favor? But they were also close for contact on the apex of turn one, on the exit of turn two. And that was really a dodgy few laps for the leading pair, and certainly not what you want to be getting involved with when you're leading or racing for the race lead around Belle Isle, Randall.
We see a move. We're going to see that Brian Hotham has closed the gap back up to Bobby Flack and Aubrey Kundle, and has now made his way past both of them. I think Aubrey Kundle may have had an issue and had to reset to the pits. We're going to be on board, and yes, coming in to turn turn four, just a little bit too much brake with the wheel turn, blocks up those rears and has heavy impact with the wall. Now Brian Hotham is able to get around Bobby Flack. Those red sidewalls are treating him well. And
Aubrey Kundle came into the pits, put on the primary tyres, and this is what happened to the number 9 to Kevin Dixon. A huge impact with the wall. Front left tyre completely detached, and well, by the time he stopped, I think we could add the front right to the parts list as well. So Ricardo Serrano leads this race, currently with 7 push-to-pass uses left. Barrera, 8/10 behind. He's got all 10 push-to-pass uses left, but Barrera, we think, can get to the end of the race without having to stop again. Serrano, almost for certain, is going to have to come in. He's going to have to change tyres. He's going to have to, crucially, get a little bit more fuel. But Barrera looks like it's not as easy as it was for the first stint for him to save that fuel to extend the fuel mileage, because he only he came in on lap 20, lap 21. We've got lap 30, or we've got 38 laps in this race as we see Serrano head to the pits. So confirmation that Ricardo Serrano couldn't have made it to the end, and that's given him 7 laps or so on the alternate tyres. Such a nice length of stint there for Serrano. But Barrera, you know, he's only got 18 laps or so, Randall, to do on this tank, but certainly looks like it's not an easy proposition for Barrera at the moment.
So we saw him saving a lot of fuel, but it's not surprising that he defended the lead as hard as he did. You may think, why would it be worth it to defend the lead so hard when you know that the other car is going to have to pit and you have a pit stop in hand? But if he just lets Serrano go, with Serrano's speed, he could open up a gap and make that gap after the pit stop be smaller. And if Justin finds himself in fuel trouble and has to save a lot, he's going to need every second he can get of that gap. So no surprise to see Justin defending hard for that lead when Serrano was going to overtake him.
Serrano coming out into traffic. Augustin Castro playing a vital role in the lead of this race, although not necessarily the role that he would have been expecting to play about 30 laps or so ago. Castro, what a disastrous race for him. Made that mistake on pit exit. Not the only driver to do so in today by any means, but really costly for our former race leader. and of course pole sitter. But Serrano starting to be held up by Castro. He'll be hoping that Augustine pulls into the pits on this next lap. Is Augustine? Oh, it's Serrano's into the wall, and that's heartbreak for the 64 car. And it's all gone undone for another potential race leader. Luckily for Serrano, that wasn't too far away from the pit entrance. He'll come in, get a new front wing, but has he damaged any suspension components? Randall, talk us through it.
It certainly looked like he had some issues there on the rear end. He's coming up to turn 12 and just gets a little bit of that curb, and it'll just really destroy your line through there. It puts him right into the wall. You may see sports cars taking some of these curbs with more of a traditional suspension, but with the push rod suspensions on these cars, you have to avoid these curbs. The curbs are lava, and we just saw another instance of that there at turn 12.
So Serrano comes back out into this race, or 32 seconds or so behind Augustine Castro. What I was going to say, but before Serrano ended up into the wall, as he's almost into the wall again on the exit of turn 3. You don't tend to see drivers struggling with track limits there, but really pushing the limits is Serrano. Do you think that Augustine Castro is going to run to the very end of this race and come in on the last lap to put on the primaries? He hasn't run the Blackwall compound yet, so he has to at some point put on the primaries. But do you think he's just gonna, try as much or do as much as the race as he can on the alternates, and then just stop one final or on the final lap to fulfill his tire compound requirements?
With the issues we've seen him have on cold tires, that's probably the safest bet. Run these reds as long as they're comfortable. If you start feeling that the reds are wearing off too much, just go ahead and dip into the pits. But you can certainly come in there, as you said, come into the white flag, throw on those black sidewalls and finish the race on them. He might be able to, now that Serrano has crashed, he may be good for that P4, even with that pit stop.
32 seconds behind is Serrano, so yeah, I think Augustine Castro might be getting a good haul of points, even with his mistake today. Tap of the wall, though, once again from Castro. You mentioned earlier on, Randall, that it's probably netcode, and I certainly agree with you, but it only really seems to be Castro that's getting all of those sort of spark effects when he gets close to the wall. He is really pushing the limits out there, and apart from that mistake on pit exit that was just cold tyres hitting the bumper the wrong way, he's been remarkably committed and clean. As we see a lap car get out of the way, that's Kuhn in, neatly tucking away from this battle. This is a battle on track for position between Flack and Castro, but it's all a little bit redundant for Augustine, as he does have to come in, he does have to serve, does have to take two compounds, but Castro on the outside then on the run towards turn 3. Flack decides against fighting the move, so Castro finds himself into the podium places. Bobby Flack demoted into 4th for now, but Castro will not be able to extend the gap unless Flack has a little bit of a mistake. But anything can happen in motor racing. Murray Walker famously stated so multiple times, and fair to say it normally ends up happening. But Barrera with that 11-second lead, Hotham in second. Looks like the podium is almost decided unless we get any more late-minute dramas. But I don't want a cool conclusion yet, but it has been a thoroughly enthralling race, Randall.
We have not seen a repeat winner yet in this season for this series. So if Justin can bring home the groceries, he will be our first repeat winner. And while you were talking, I had a little peek at the network stats in the sim. And Castro is at a significantly higher ping than everybody else. He's got about a 225 ping. That's 225 milliseconds it takes for information to fly over the network from his computer to the server. So, not to say that he's not pushing the limits, because we know Castro, he certainly is pushing those limits. But a lot of those wall scrapes are purely just netcode, just a difference in ping.
Interesting, of course. A feature that's very much exclusive to the world of sim racing. But we'll always add another. We can add that to the book of driver excuses, I wonder. Serrano sets a new personal best of 15.2, has the pace on those alternate tyres. He's starting to catch Flack and Castro ahead of him, although it won't really matter unless anybody else has to dive into the pits. Hotham catching Justin Barrera, but you just get the sense that Barrera knows that this race is his to lose, and he just needs to drive carefully. He needs to not make a mistake, like we saw Augustine Castro do, like we saw Serrano do. It's all about being safe, fuel saving, tyre management, and just bringing it home. It doesn't matter your winning margin. It just matters that you cross the checkered flag first, as we do see Augustine Castro head into the pit. So he decided that he wants 2 laps on those primary tyres. Tune in, another driver heading into the pit lane as well. So it will be flagged on the podium, and Serrano, that's the battle that I'm interested in. Where does Ricardo Serrano come out in relation to Augustine Castro? As we see Serrano into the wall again, and just as I was saying it, and that's the same place, is it Randall, that we saw him make that mistake a few laps ago, with Serrano not having the race that he would have wanted.
It is the same place, and I suspect maybe the same incident. A carbon copy of the first one. We see him on the run from 11 to 12. Going to break just before the 200. He breaks, actually goes quite deep there before he gets on the brakes and gets it out into the tire barrier. If you're too heavy into the brakes with these cars and try to turn that wheel, it's just not going to happen. And he finds himself with a one-way ticket to the pits.
And another, I mean, he was caught out by the dirty areas. That's another car without a front right tyre, and Neil Alexander heads into the wall. And Kunin as well, he's got the same damage that Neil Alexander had. If they made contact, I wonder. Well, Kunin's struggling to get it slowed down. This is what happened to the 86 on pit exit. We saw him just head into the pits. Is he going to lose the rear? Is he going to do what Augustine Castro did early on? Manages to make his way through turns 1 and 2 successfully. Neil Alexander behind. Let's have a look. Into the braking zone of turn 3 we go. All looking good so far. In fact, for both Kunin and Neil Alexander behind him. All looking good so far. Have they come together? Oh,
turn 5. Yes.
Turn 5. Simultaneous incidents for Kunin and Neil Alexander. You can't blame the incident on one another, but almost a little bit of a sympathy accident there for Neil Alexander, seeing Q fall foul of turn 5. And currently we only have 7 drivers out on the racing circuit at the moment. That's not as many, I think, as we were liking, although I do believe Serrano is just coming out, so we might be into the lofty heights of 8 cars back out on the circuit.
And if you'll remember what I said back at the very beginning of the broadcast, a lot of these drivers need to treat this like an endurance race. Attrition is always high at Belle Isle. We're seeing the walls claim quite a few victims today. Luckily, they have some fast repairs in hand in this league so they can carry on with the race. Now, this race is Justin Barrera's to lose. He's just got to bring home the groceries on the white flag lap. You see very smooth inputs. He's very late and very slow to get to the throttle. Not getting to the full throttle between 4 and 5 there, even, it sounded like. Just taking it very easy. He has nearly 11 seconds in hand. Just got to bring it home and across the line.
Did you mention Randall? White flag then flies at Belle Isle into the braking zone, not pushing whatsoever, is your race leader, Justin Barrera. He knows he's got such a big buffer to the car behind. There's no point in pushing. There's no point in adding any more risk to this race. Neil Alexander comes out of the pits and gains a whole chunk of positions just due to the carnage of the final few laps. Neil Alexander back up into 9th, Kunin in 8th, even after driving a lap without a front right tyre. But Barrera rounds the final real corner of turn 13, just has a king in between him and the second race win of the season. Barrera crosses the line then to win round 6 of the WSRL IndyCar series. Brian Hotham will pick up second place, and Hotham up 5 spots from where he started. Great race by himself. And then you have to go 24 seconds or so behind Hotham to see the third place man, Bobby Flack, who's being caught by Augustine Castro. In all fairness, Castro has been rapid on those primary tyres. It's got the gap, down to 1.7 seconds. That was 7, I think, seconds at some point in this race. Castro needed another lap and maybe could have been sitting on the podium, but Flack will get that 3rd spot. Augustine Castro will have to settle for 4th place. Castro sets the fastest lap of the race on the final lap. It's just proving the pace that Castro had at his disposal today. Aubrey Cundell finished in 5th, Ellsworth 6th. Harris in 7th, Cunin in 8th, Neil Alexander will finish 9th, and Cochrane in 10th, and Kevin Dixon will be your 11th place finisher. That's a very damaged number 9 car there, Randall. Well, it wouldn't be Dallara, would it, without at least one car crossing the line without all bodywork attached. And what has happened to the number 9, I wonder, Randall?
It's like he just gets turn 7 a little bit wrong, comes in a little hot, misses the apex, ends up in the tire barrier. not the most delicate 3-point turn here. He's going to tag the wall a couple times, make that a 5-point turn, gets it going back in the right direction, and it's just eager to see that start finish straight and to see Belle Isle in his rearview mirror.
I think that sort of sums up many drivers' opinion of Belle Isle. Barrera, though, evidence of some great donuts there. Barrera thoroughly deserved that race win, was a driver that kept it on the circuit exactly when he needed to, did exactly what he had to do, and that meant that he came home with a 9.8 second advantage over Brian Hotham in 2nd place. Bobby Flack in 3rd rounds out your podium for round 6. Augustine Castro, the pole sitter, made that mistake on the exit of the pit lane on his first stop. He'll have to settle for 4th place, and then amazingly, we're already down to drivers who are 1 lap away from Justin Barrera. Aubrey Kundal finishing 5th, Gavin Ellsworth in 6th, Clay Harris finishes in 7th, 2 laps down, Cunin in 8th, Neil Alexander in 9th, and Barry Cochrane rounding out your top 10. Kevin Dixon finished in 11th and was the final driver running on the circuit. Ricardo Serrano then the first of your retirees. Mike Weir, Christian Gritzko and Chad Rogers all did not make the checkered flag. And Randall, 4 cars finish on the lead lap. Even for Belle Isle, that feels pretty extraordinary.
And the top 3 cars only did 1 pit stop. It was all the way back to Augustine Castro before you see a car that took more than 1 pit stop. So that played into why there were so many cars a lap down. And you got to think, if you're Christian Gritzko or Chad Rogers and disconnected early, you probably could have had quite a few of those spots back that you lost at the start just by getting back out there and surviving. There was a lot of issues. So a missed opportunity for those 2 drivers.
Certainly was. That's always a good port of call. It is to just sort of wait out the race and treat it like an endurance race. But well, we can ask some of our drivers how they fared today, and I can bring in your race winner into the commentary booth. Justin Barrera, welcome to the commentary booth. And wow, that looked like a really enjoyable race from yourself. Be honest though, were you expecting a race win when the checkered flag flew? When the green flag flew today?
I really don't know, because I had was it Gritzko and 2 other people I can't think off the top of my head right now. I had those guys in front of me. I was glad I got to 3rd in the first couple corners, and then I just dialed into my pace I wanted. And then watching who is it, Castro? Yeah, Augustine Castro run. I figured he was doing the same strategy I was until he pitted. I don't remember what lap he pitted, but he went earlier than I figured you can do. And I realized he probably wasn't going to make the 1 stop happen. But I don't know. In the end, I was happy with my pace and everything.
And talk us through that second stint. You came out on the primary tyres. You were being caught by Ricardo Serrano. You had that little bit of a, should we call it a disagreement into turn 3? Were you lifting off? Were you trying to allow him past, or were you just having to fuel save so much to make sure that you got to the end of the race?
Which one was it? The first one or second one? I honestly, I wish I had somebody to tell me, but I didn't realize he was on the 2-stop strategy. I would have just let him go. I would have never done anything stupid like that. I thought he was on a 1 stop and he was making up time on me. So my brain was like to not let him go. But then as soon as he got by me, I just like settled in, and maybe I was going to attack him. And then when we went to the pits, I was like, okay, this is just done ridiculous. I will say, for the tires, I believe personally that the the red tires don't like to have a lot of heat in them, while the black tires do like to have more heat in them to keep them alive and going fast. And I think on this track, unless you can push that pace where you can go fast into every corner, I think the red tires are an advantage to have over the blacks here, if you're trying to stay alive and not go super fast. Just because of, I think the reds last longer, they give you better grip if you keep the temp out of them, etc. I literally, all I did was I put down map 5 for maximum fuel savings, and I basically lifted and coasted into a lot of these places early, so I could take the corner how I wanted to take it, and turn in early, get on the power early, and just be very gentle on the accelerator.
A fascinating insight. Thank you so much, Justin, for coming into the commentary booth and talking about your race. Before we let you go and celebrate, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to at all on the broadcast?
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to the Shut Up the Driving guys, the Wrong Stuff, Slow Motion Broadcasting. A friend of mine that crashed in his Porsche recently, unfortunately, I dedicate this race to him. He's still alive, it just, he's in the hospital right now. And so David Williamson is my friend, and I just hope he has a good recovery. And everybody that's helped me get me to here, mom, dad, sister, brothers, family, everybody, and Brandon Dallara Designs for the liveries.
Well, that's a good list of shout outs, and of course we extend our good wishes to your friend. Well, thank you so much, Justin, and once again, congratulations on your race win tonight.
Thank you.
And Randall, have you managed to find any other of those pesky drivers in the paddock at all?
That's right. I have your second place finisher, Brian Hotham. Brian, tell us about your race out there today.
It was a whirlwind. Man, that track is tough. Basically, it just came down to fuel strategy for me. I was able to take advantage of just stopping once and trying to avoid the carnage or hitting the wall myself. I did come home with some damage, but kept it to a minimum.
It's very hard to not come home with any damage at Belle Isle. We saw you fighting with Bobby Flack throughout a lot of the race. How hard was it to get around Bobby?
Very. And then when I finally did, it felt like he just opened the door a little bit. I was trying to not, cause a dive bomb or anything like that, but I felt like it was there. And then we were side by side, I think, on the exit, and I think cooler heads prevailed. Maybe he backed out, I'm not sure, but I had to take advantage when I saw the door open a little bit.
Now, we never wish ill on another driver, but Aubrey Condell was part of that threesome for a long part of the race. How much of a sigh of relief was there whenever you saw that he had to take repairs?
Oh, I was wondering what happened to him, because yes, he was very fast, and then took advantage. I left the door open a couple times and he got by me, and then he just gapped me. He just took off. So I was surprised to see him having to pit. I think a third or fourth time.
I think it was his third stop, yes.
Yeah. That was the only way I was going to beat him.
You're a serial podium stander, and we have you here again on the second step of the podium. Is there anybody you'd like to shout out or thank?
Just my teammates once again. Divided by Zero. The league has been a blast. So, I really like the strategy part of the IndyCar is amazing, and I just want to thank you guys as well.
Well, great race. Congratulations, Brian, and hopefully we'll see you up here again next week at Nurburgring.
Hopefully. Thank you.
That was your second place finisher, Brian Hotham, and Seb, I think you have the wild man, Bobby Flack, ready for an interview.
I certainly do. Welcome, Bobby, to the commentary booth. Well, according to the stats, you started in third and finished in third, but yeah, somehow I don't think that quite describes your race. Talk us through it.
Not sure what you're talking about. It was smooth sailing the entire time. Yeah, I made it interesting, that's for sure. Pitted a lap early, somehow screwed up the fuel run on the last time, tried to knock the wall down. Did I get it all? I think right there.
I mean, it looked fairly frenetic out there, but I think for everybody, I don't think you were alone in scraping the wall a few times. is Dallara a track that you enjoy? Do you enjoy the challenge, or do you prefer a more open circuit?
Oh no, it's probably my favorite track, or Long Beach. I just love them. These three courses, the tight ones like that. So yeah, I was happy to be here, and just man, Justin and Brian were fast. I'll tell you what, just couldn't. Even before I tried to knock the wall down, just didn't quite have the pace to keep up with them, and I was just trying not to, just trying to get some good points, honestly.
And you're involved in that fight, for most of for a long time of the race with Aubrey Condell and Hotham, and you were leading that pack for quite some time. Did you feel pressurized, or did it almost sort of allow you to keep focused? Does that pressure sort of allow you to keep focus around the circuit?
It's tough. I would say it certainly makes it a little more interesting, especially with Brian being the points leader. I saw him coming behind me, and that was right about the time I hit the wall, so I really couldn't do anything to fight him. But yeah, I mean, you're always, you're certainly paying attention to who's around, and when there's Simon there on you, that doesn't help anything around that place. But yeah, it's mostly just if someone gets too close to your mirror, I'm happy to let anyone go around that place. It's not a place to be duking it out.
Certainly. So, well, congratulations, Bobby, on your third place finish. Before we let you go and celebrate, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to at all?
Yeah, just thank you to all my Team Empire teammates that while they're not here, they're always great support. Rocket Designs, laying down the paint, Windrider.com, and you guys do a great job. I appreciate you guys and the league, and we'll see you next week.
And likewise, Bobby, and once again, congratulations on your podium place.
Thank you, sir. You guys have a good night.
You too. And Randall, I mean, how do you sum up a race around Belle Isle? It was really, really entertaining. IndyCar never fails to deliver, certainly not with the added sort of strategy of fuel saving and the tyres, but really, really enthralling.
Belle Isle is almost always survival of the fittest, not survival of the fastest. And we saw that here again today. Some of the faster cars really struggled to keep it out of the wall. And some of the cars that were taking it easy, saving fuel, conserving their tires, all ended up on the podium.
And then confirmation of your race results. But, well, we were meant to be at the Nurburgring this week, or at least that was our impression in the commentary booth. Randall, my understanding is we'll be there next week. So, how do you think our drivers are going to fare? Because it's such a different circuit from the track that we raced at tonight.
Nurburgring is a very, very technical track, and it's not one that we've ever seen IndyCars on in real life. So it'll be quite interesting to see how these drivers take to that course. I'm going to wish I was out there in the car with them because I love that place. Super technical. So you're going to see some of your drivers that are very, very sound, have very sound fundamentals, are going to rise to the occasion and have a good finish there at Nurburgring.
I will indeed. So we don't have much time left in the broadcast, just enough time to tell you about our upcoming broadcast for this week. Sunday at 8 p.m. EST, XSLR returns. We have the VW Beetles Light from Bark River after a great round one, or last Sunday. We return for our third installment of the Dirt Road section of the season. 2 races left to go in that season. And then on Thursday, we have the WSRL IndyCar Series at 9 p.m. EST. That gets underway. Will be from the Nurburgring GP. And of course, at 9:15 p.m. EST on a Thursday as well, we have the Mazda MX-5, or the Spec 5 Mazda MX-5 Championship. And they will be from Mid-Ohio. But that is all from us here tonight. Congratulations to all our race finishers. And thank you so much to Randall, McGrew, and Dustin, Ollis in the commentary booth. My name has been Sebastian Bosch-Williams, and we'll see you in 1 week's time as the championship heads to Germany.